A handful of you may be wondering why Electronic Arts doesn't put its games on the Nintendo Switch. I would imagine it's only a handful because most people have a Switch to play real video games, not half-baked, unfinished live service crap. But even so, you'd think a game like The Sims would be a good fit. At least one that isn't designed to be half-baked to live service crap. If you go to EA.com and look at their listings for Nintendo Switch games, you will find less than a meager portion. Faye, which makes sense, FIFA 18, FIFA 19 and Unravel 2 are the only listings. According to EA's robotics CEO Andrew Wilson, this is because Switch players simply wouldn't appreciate Electronic Arts games on the platform. EA sees the Switch as a supplementary system, something people own in addition to an Xbox One, PS4 or PC. Though I'd add, purely as a personally speculative comment, that I'm sure the fact the Switch isn't quite as ready-made for persistent online connections and half-baked live service crap probably helps EA's decision-making on this particular subject. Either way, I'm fine with this. I can't find the tweet now, but ages ago I mentioned how companies like Activision and EA seem to be largely ignoring the Switch. They've thrown a few ports up there. Activision most notably put Diablo 3 on there, and even EA doesn't ignore an opportunity to pop FIFA on something. But nonetheless, two of the greediest, shittiest publishers ignoring the Switch is something I'm completely in favour of. One of the selling points of the Switch is that EA and Activision don't seem all that interested in it. That's great for me. I play on the Switch more than any other system. I play quite a few good mainstream games on there, quite a few good indie games on there, and of course a shed load of ports. And there's a relative drought of exploitative, predatory, microtransaction-fueled filth on the storefront, which is great. I mean, there is some slimy trash up there on the eShop. I did just note that 2 FIFA games are on there, for example, but the majority of the worst third-party publisher attention is elsewhere, and that's just great. So here's what EA's cyborg-in-chief Andrew Wilson said during an earnings call.
Anytime we are evaluating platform conversations, we are really looking at a couple of things. One, does the game really fit the profile of that platform in terms of the control or the community ecosystem? Two, do we think the community playing on that platform would appreciate the game to go there, or would they prefer to play it somewhere else?
According to EA's data, people who own a Switch typically own another gaming system as well and prefer to play EA's games on those other systems. Though Game Informer did note that the Switch ports for FIFA and Faye were pretty damn shoddy, so it might not be a surprise that people choose to play EA games elsewhere. Now, I'm not going to disagree with anything Andrew Wilson said there. If EA's data says that Switch owners don't appreciate EA's games, or at the very least prefer to play them elsewhere, I'm not going to dissuade EA from ignoring the Switch. I mean, I guess I prove their point. I'm an avid Switch player, and in general, I don't appreciate Electronic Arts ever. The less of EA's rancid poison on a system I really like, the better as far as I'm concerned. In addition to citing a lack of appreciation, Andrew Wilson also said that the Switch's online infrastructure may not be able to handle the user-generated content and what he calls the creativity and customization found in a game like The Sims. And I think that part is the real pertinent action here. Because you look at companies like Activision, you look at companies like Electronic Arts, their predominant focus is the oversaturated live service market, and live services really need to be supported by a robust online infrastructure. Not that games haven't tried it, Warframe just about works, Fortnite runs okay on it, but something like Anthem, which will be graphically demanding to begin with, let alone its online requirements, that would be a chuffing disaster. I mean, more of a disaster than Anthem already is. And while there doesn't seem to be any data for it, I'd be very interested to see just how receptive to aggressive monetization Switch players are as compared to other systems. It's just never seemed to me like it would be a good fit. Again, it's there. I mean, Activision put Crash Team Racing on the Switch, and that's going to get microtransactions patched in. But again, it's very limited, and when you look at the games Activision's put on there, it's pretty limited and focused mostly on games that just look like they'd already play well on that platform, like the Crash games, or Spyro, or the aforementioned Diablo port. Same goes for Ubisoft. They've actually worked directly with Nintendo to make Starlink and Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, but otherwise their output on the Switch has been pretty limited. Christ almighty, how many times did I say limited in this video? You look at some of the big name games that have been or are being ported to Switch, and they're certainly not part of the live service Gold Rush, The Witcher 3 being one of the most notable port jobs, and The Outer Wilds being quite a surprise recent announcement. The Switch isn't lacking for pretty ambitious ports, which have been released in, shall we say, varying degrees of quality. Some of them are quite impressive, some of them not so much. Real shame with Saints Row the Third. Real shame. The Switch is of course a big success, and it's been a great place for smaller games to get noticed. They're not buried by asset flips like they are on Steam, they're not upstaged by big AAA releases like they are on other platforms. The indie devs I've spoken to tend to find a lot of success on the Switch. And between the high-profile ports and Nintendo's own first-party work, the system isn't exactly hurting for bigger games. In fact, I downloaded that Fire Emblem last night. I'm going to give that a go when I'm done here. And I can buy and play these games with a far greater degree of trust than I can elsewhere at the moment. There's still shady shit to look out for, but when companies like EA are far less interested in a system, I get to be far less wary about aggressive monetization and shady business practices. How about that? So please, Electronic Arts, please, 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 by all means, continue to snub the Switch. I buy so many more games on there, I play so many more games for fun on there than I do anywhere else. And without you stinking up the joint, I'm all the happier to do so. So I'll be over here, EA, playing Fire Emblem, and you can be over there, EA, trying to sell gambling to children again. You shifty little fuckworms. I promise this entire video wasn't done just as an excuse to do the Android Wilson voice.